In the Uranium One scandal, the FBI informant at the center of this controversial deal is breaking his silence with some explosive testimony that connects Hillary Clinton and Russia, and not in a good way. Todd Pyro here with the details this morning. Hey, Todd.
Hey, Rob. Good morning to you. These suspicions swirling around Uranium One exploding overnight. Douglas Campbell is the informant, and in written congressional testimony obtained by The Hill, he said Russian nuclear officials told him that Moscow hired an American lobbying firm named APCO Worldwide for $3 million, hoping to influence then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. And at the center of it all, the Clinton Foundation. Campbell testified, quote, APCO is expected to give assistance free of charge to the Clinton Global Initiative as part of their effort to create a favorable environment to ensure the Obama administration made affirmative decisions on everything from Uranium One to the U.S.-Russia Civilian Nuclear Cooperation Agreement.
He's telling the FBI agents that's who he's supposed to be working with, and he's telling them about the strategic plan of Putin to take over the uranium industry, and he's writing up these reports and telling them about it. He's also telling them about the corruption in these companies. All of them are, they're all one company, even though they have different names. But they were so confident, Sean, the Russians, that they told Mr. Campbell that with the Clintons' help, it was a shoe-in to get CFIUS approval, and they were so confident in that they even had him open up a new office because they were planning on the kind of business they were going to do as soon as CFIUS approved it.
A spokesperson for APCO said their work with the Clinton Foundation and Russia are not connected, and their work with Russia did not involve Uranium One. A Clinton spokesperson said that Campbell's testimony is a distraction from the Trump-Russia investigation, and Democrats now pushing for Campbell's testimony to be released. Just scratching the surface, Rob.
Yeah, Dems say you can't trust this guy. Republicans say you can. We're going to analyze that here coming up in the show. Todd, thanks so much.
No problem.
All right, newly released text messages exchanged between former FBI lovers raising questions about President Obama's involvement in possibly the Clinton email investigation or the Russia investigation. In these messages from September 2016, Lisa Page and Peter Strzok discuss an upcoming briefing with President Obama for then FBI Director James Comey. Strzok writing, check out my 9:30 meeting on the 7th. Page answering him, I can tell you why you're having that meeting. It's not what you think. Strzok writing back, TPS for D, it's talking points for Director Comey. Page answering, yes, because POTUS wants to know everything we are doing. Now, the texts do seem to contradict what former President Obama previously told our own Chris Wallace back in 2016.
I do not talk to the Attorney General about pending investigations. I do not talk to FBI directors about pending investigations. I guarantee that there is no political influence in any investigation conducted by the Justice Department or the FBI, not just in this case, but in any case.
All right, with these new texts implicating President Obama here, Democrats now scrambling to cover for the former president. But Congressman Jim Jordan says when you lay out the facts, there's just one conclusion that you can draw.
You got to take it in context. This is September 2nd. Remember, July 5th is the day they say we're not going to charge Clinton. Comey does his now famous press conference and say no charges will be brought. Later that same month, Peter Strzok, the same guy who ran the Clinton investigation, opens the Russia-Trump investigation. 2 weeks later, August 14th, we have the text message from Strzok and Page where Peter Strzok says we need an insurance policy in case the American people actually make Donald Trump president. And then 2 weeks after that, September 2nd, they say POTUS needs to know everything we are doing. So take it in context. I think it raises lots of concerns, lots of suspicion. That's why we need to look into it and find out exactly what's going on.
And a lot more to look into here. And on top of all that, to top all that off, in her April 2016 FBI interview, Clinton aide Huma Abedin was shown an email exchange between President Obama and then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. President Obama used an alias. Abedin said the email had to be classified and then asked for a copy of her own. So we get deeper into the Clinton email scandal there. Now to a live look here. Capitol Hill, where lawmakers have just hours left, really, to avoid yet another government shutdown. Congress voting on a budget deal that would keep the doors open for another 2 years. So that would continue it for quite a while. But not everybody is in favor of getting this passed. Democrat Nancy Pelosi slammed the bill for a record 8 hours on the floor yesterday. It was a marathon speech, I believe the longest ever. And Griff Jenkins joins us live now from Washington with the very latest on that. She must be tired today, huh, Griff?
Yes, she is. Good morning, Rob. Senate leaders reached an agreement intended to stave off that midnight shutdown deadline. And let me just tell you what's in that 2-year budget deal. It has $165 billion more for the military, $131 billion for domestic programs, a debt ceiling increase through March 2019, disaster relief funding for hurricane and wildfire victims, and keeping the government open through March 23rd. But it does not do anything for the so-called dreamers. And Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi sure let it be known, taking to the floor for 8 hours and 7 minutes, demanding a deal on DACA from Speaker Paul Ryan.
The Republican moral cowardice must end. Members of Congress are trustees of the people and of our nation. Why are we here if not to protect the patriotic young people who are determined to contribute and to strengthen America? So I'm going to go on as long as my leadership minute allows.
Ryan says he wants a deal on DACA, but the entire House should support this budget deal because it will make America safer and stronger. However, Ryan's real problems may lie more with the House's Conservative Freedom Caucus.
I'm not only a no, I'm a hell no. I don't know if we have enough votes amongst the members to stop this legislation. All I know is that, unfortunately, those who vote for this bill are betraying our country's future.
Now, McConnell and Schumer are on the same page, but it's unclear, Rob, when the Senate plans to vote today or if they'll vote at all if they know that it's not going to pass in the House. So we are in for a day of drama as this deadline approaches.
Yes, we are. And we've only got till tonight at midnight, so they always keep doing this to us. All right. Thanks so much, Griff. We appreciate it. A Fox News alert breaking overnight. A police officer is shot and killed responding to a call near Dallas, Texas. The unidentified officer gunned down at an apartment complex after finding another shooting victim there. The suspect did surrender to police, but the motive right now is unknown. Heartbroken police officers mourning the loss of one of their own as Governor Greg Abbott offers condolences, tweeting, "Texas will honor the lost officer with the dignity he deserves. May God rest his soul and may his legacy live on in others' service." 2 people fighting for their lives after a brutal stabbing attack at a church. Police say a parishioner launched the assault in the middle of services in Corpus Christi, Texas, stabbing the pastor in the chest and then a band member in the neck. 2 others stabbed trying to get away from the person. The suspect is in custody. The motive is unknown. The stabbing comes just months after 26 people were killed when a gunman opened fire at a church near San Antonio. At this point, we don't believe anybody was killed in this stabbing. In a dramatic show of force, American jets bombing pro-regime forces in Syria, killing more than 100 troops of Bashar al-Assad. The Pentagon says fighters moved Russian-built tanks and fired mortars that landed about 500 yards away from their own coalition troops. Officials say the bombing was in self-defense. No Americans hurt in this attack. The U.S. bombed a Syrian air base last year after President Bashar al-Assad used chemical weapons on his own people. We've now seen evidence that he's done this again. While you were sleeping, Vice President Mike Pence and Second Lady Karen Pence landing in South Korea ahead of the Winter Olympics. The VP will lead the U.S. delegation at tomorrow's opening ceremony. Last night, he met with American service members at Yokoto Air Base in Japan, saying that the military is ready for anything.
All options are on the table. And the American Armed Forces and Self-Defense Forces of Japan will be ready to defend our people and our way of life.
Right now, Vice President is on his way to a bilateral meeting with the president of South Korea. From being replaced in the Super Bowl to replacing the vice president, Philadelphia Eagles quarterback Carson Wentz will be the keynote speaker at the National Prayer Breakfast tonight. He's stepping in for Vice President Mike Pence, who is in South Korea for the Winter Olympics opening ceremony. In just a few minutes, Pastor Robert Jeffress will join us with what we can expect from this annual service. All right, 10 minutes after the hour, with ISIS on the run in the Middle East and losing their territory fast, a brand new threat emerges. The new warning about al-Qaeda taking over some territory. And pay for play, bombshell new testimony from an FBI informant in the Uranium One scandal. Todd Pyro just had the story. The informant says Hillary Clinton was bribed by Russia. Our next guest says the facts don't lie. And actor Jim Carrey trying to pull the mask off Russia's fake news by waging war on Facebook. Why he says you need to do the same thing. We'll talk about that coming up.
Alrighty then.
All right, a Fox News alert analyzing our top story here. An FBI informant now breaking his silence on the Uranium One scandal. Douglas Campbell now tying the Clintons to a bribery scheme set up by the Russians. Campbell writing in testimony to congressional committees there. Here now to react to this allegation, and it's a big one, as former member of the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force, Steve Rogers. Steve, thanks so much for coming on this morning. You've got this guy who has been an informant for the DOJ and the FBI, and at least at some point has had a credible past, now making this big allegation, and now, of course, you've got Democrats saying you can't trust this guy. Republicans, of course, I'm sure say something different. Break this all down for us.
Well, a couple of things to keep in mind. I've said all along that the hunters have now become the hunted, and now that's going right up to the Obama White House. Look, this individual, Doug Campbell, was credible in the eyes of the FBI. He's a great asset, great informant, and as you said earlier, the facts lay this out. You know, they gave him a $50,000 check some time ago for the information that he provided them. So that's number one. Number two, as information was coming to the FBI, the Obama White House was making decisions in favor of the Russian government. Number three, for anyone to suggest that President Obama was never briefed on information and intelligence that was gathered regarding Russia, they're being untruthful. The President of the United States is always in on the loop regarding top secret information, especially involving a foreign power.
Yeah, and I've read this stuff in articles about the Russians celebrating the fact that they got this deal, how it gives them leverage over the United States, controlling this uranium, being able to use that for nuclear purposes would be a huge advantage for Russia. So it does beg the question, why did we give them this access? And that remains to be seen.
Yeah, and keep in mind that President Trump all along as a candidate has always stated that we make ridiculous deals. And this was one of them. Why? They wanted to give Hillary Clinton an advantage, and it is now falling apart.
Okay, let's go to some of this testimony here from Douglas Campbell. Here's a quote. APCO, which is a lobbying group, was expected to give assistance free of charge to the Clinton Global Initiative as part of their effort to create a favorable environment to ensure the Obama administration made affirmative decisions on everything from Uranium One to the U.S.-Russia Civilian Nuclear Cooperation Agreement. Let's go to another one here real quick. This is on why the U.S. wasn't more aggressive with Russia. I expressed these concerns repeatedly to my FBI handlers. The response I got was that politics was somehow involved. So Campbell, they're saying exactly what I just asked. Why are we, doing favors for a country that we don't have a great history with here?
Well, no, we don't. It's all about money, and it's all about politics. You always follow the money, and you find out that the Clinton Foundation always seems to be involved in these messy, murky deals. And the political end of course, was the presidential election.
Right. Okay. All right. Let's go to topic 2 here. We're back with the love affair at the FBI between Peter Strzok and Lisa Page. And now this gets a little bit deeper here because we start seeing possibly some involvement with President Obama, who had said before that there's a line between, what the FBI and the DOJ does and the White House, and he doesn't cross that line. Let's go back and there's part of a text right here from Lisa Page. POTUS wants to know everything we are doing. Now, the consensus, I believe, from some of our people in Washington that are analyzing this is that this must have been regarding the Trump-Russia investigation, because at that point, the Hillary Clinton investigation had been closed for quite some time. But if we go to a quick soundbite here from President Obama back in 2016, let's listen to this.
I do not talk to FBI directors about pending investigations. We have a strict line and always have maintained it. I guarantee that there is no political influence in any investigation conducted by the Justice Department or the FBI, not just in this case, but in any case.
And she will be
full stop, period.
full stop, period. Now, you see that and you match that with Lisa Page saying POTUS wants to know everything we're doing at the FBI.
Look, the President of the United States has to be in on the loop on all of these investigations. Many of them involve foreign intelligence assets, et cetera. For the President to suggest that he doesn't ask questions, I think is not true.
Okay. You don't see any wrongdoing here at this point.
No. The fact of the matter is that it's, the cover-up is worse than the crime.
Right.
We always know that. And there seems to be an idea that they're going to cover everything up as we move along. But they're getting caught. They're really getting caught. And I think as we move forward, a lot more is going to come out.
So trying to know what's going on is not bad. Maybe trying to influence that could be a real big problem. All right, Steve, thank you so much for coming on this morning.
You're welcome.
All right. Okay, 19 minutes after the hour, nothing routine about this traffic stop. A terrifying moment. A Texas deputy is dragged by a suspected drunk driver. And Nancy Pelosi is setting a House record trying to get a deal for Dreamers.
Let us thank and acknowledge the Dreamers for their courage, their optimism, their inspiration to make America more American.
All this while her party pretty much ignored the Dreamers yesterday. Did her marathon speech make any difference? Carly Shipkiss has that coming up. All right, it was a Nancy buster on the House floor. The House Minority Leader getting the most of her, quote, magic minute.
All night, as I was saying my rosaries blessed by the Pope in honor of my mother, I thought, should we say the rosary on the floor? I'm reminded of my own grandson. He had a very close friend whose name is Antonio, who's from Guatemala. He said, I wish I had brown skin and brown eyes like Antonio.
8 hours of this. Carly Shimkus with Fox News Headlines 24/7 here with reaction to this very long and record-setting speech.
Yeah, an impressive showing of stamina, Rob, from House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi, who spoke for 8 hours demanding protection for Dreamers be part of the budget deal. Now, like you mentioned, Pelosi broke a record for longest continuous House floor speech. And here is her reaction when she learned of that news.
I just got word that the House historian confirms you have now set the record for the longest continuous speech in the House since at least 1909.
How about that? Wow. Well, Pelosi's marathon speech included stories of Dreamers, but some on social media say that they wish that Pelosi would have used that energy to advocate for American citizens, including Rebecca, who says, is this the same woman who couldn't stand for the parents whose daughters were killed by MS-13? But still, the hashtag #GoNancyGo became a top trending topic on social media as people cheered her on. Amy says, I'm standing in my living room clapping for you now, along with all your colleagues in the House of Representatives. Keep going. And by the way, Rob, she spoke for 8 hours in 4-inch heels. That's the most impressive part of this whole thing.
That is impressive, although her party pretty much ignored those same people yesterday. But we'll talk about that later, Carly. Yeah. All right, what's Jim Carrey doing? He's gotten a bit strange as he's gotten older.
Yeah, well, comedian Jim Carrey not laughing at Facebook. He says that he's dumping his Facebook account and stock in a tweet saying, I'm dumping my Facebook stock and deleting my page because Facebook profited from Russian interference in our elections, and they're still not doing enough to stop it. I encourage all other investors who care about our future to do the same. Now, he's talking about Russian purchased ads that were, intended to affect the outcome of our election. One person on Twitter said, I did the same. I couldn't stomach profiting from the stock, so I dumped it. But another Twitter user says, hey, listen, Twitter also, there were also Russian linked ads on Twitter. So maybe you got to dump everything if you're going to dump Facebook. So, yeah, that's how that one shaped up.
All right, fair enough. All right, let's talk about this adorable Gerber baby of the year.
That's right. A 1-year-old from Georgia was named the very first child with Down syndrome to become a Gerber baby. Look at this face. Gerber announced the news on Instagram saying, congratulations to our 2018 Gerber spokes baby, Lucas. Welcome to the family, sending him love. Now, his family received $50,000 for this, and Gerber says that they couldn't pass up that winning smile.
I think that's a great smile. That's a cute kid. I love that story. Carly, thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
26 minutes after the hour, a disastrous 2 months for Amtrak with 4 crashes, 6 people killed. Can these tragedies be prevented? Our next guest, an aerospace engineer, says yes, but it's all about funding. We are back with a Fox News alert. Al-Qaeda is still out there and is a greater threat than ISIS in places like Yemen and Somalia. A UN report claims the two groups are now planning attacks together as ISIS has been eviscerated as of late. Another report says ISIS is still a significant threat despite being run out of Iraq and Syria. Meanwhile, the terror group has issued a chilling new propaganda video threatening another invasion in Paris. Breaking overnight, South Korea's president will meet with the sister of North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un today. Their meeting comes as the rogue nation holds their 70th anniversary military parade on the eve of the Winter Olympics. This brand new video showing Kim Jong-un giving a speech in front of the North Korean army. All right, high-profile train crashes plaguing companies like Amtrak. Just this week, a train broke apart while traveling 125 miles per hour. That incident following 3 deadly crashes, and they come as the rail industry claims key safety technology is not due until 2020. But that date has now been pushed back several times, so we'll see if that one holds. Should you be concerned for your safety if you ride on these trains? Here now is the former U.S. Deputy Assistant Secretary of Transportation for Technology Policy. Nice long title for Oliver McGee. Thanks, Oliver, getting up very early this morning from Texas. We do appreciate it. We've got to talk about serious stuff here, though. I mean, these trains obviously carry people safely by and large, but there have been a few incidents of late that are a bit stressing.
Thank you for having me this morning, Rob. You're absolutely right. In fact, in the last 3 years, we've had about 26 derailments that have been reported by Amtrak, which is very, very shocking. But the last 3 have been most riveting. You're right. Positive train control is a solution. This has been confirmed this week by the NTSB. And this is really all about traffic control systems like you see in the highway control systems that were invented by the great Garrett Augustus Morgan in 1923. He was the first black to own an automobile in Cleveland, as a matter of fact, as a plug for Black History Month. But the key thing is positive train controls to stop these trains, is to automatically stop them when they see obstructions, and also speed control. As we saw in Amtrak 501, we had to slow the train down to negotiate the turn before it went into the Interstate 5 highway system. Right. And we also need to look at if there are obstructions that positive train control begins to break the system. But more importantly, positive train control looks ahead of the track and see if there's signal tracking that is sending the train off course onto a stationary freight train. We're very lucky about Amtrak 91 because what if that train had some hazmats and then also we had a bomb? Then we would have had a lot more injuries on that event at the time. Remember, trains are essentially aircraft structures rolling on the ground. So we need to have the same type of digital cockpit, the same type of wireless communication inside these engine systems, like we have on Airbuses and Boeing aircraft. Those are digital cockpits. Well, imagine if we did not have positive plane control or air traffic control. We'd be in a lot of trouble.
We would be in a lot of trouble. And let's look at just how long. I mean, we've been working on this system, this PosiTrack or positive train control, for quite a few years now. Here's a look at the deadlines that we have passed. 2008, Congress requires installation of positive train control, PTC, system by the end of 2015. Of course, we didn't see that. 2015, Congress extended the deadline to install PTC by at least 3 years. So now here we are in 2018. The new deadline is 2020 for PTC. Now, these are private companies that do take some funding from the federal government. Is that correct, Oliver?
Absolutely. And
why are we putting up with this? I mean, these guys are making a profit. They're making money.
Well, I think what President Trump has called in the State of the Union address in the crumbling infrastructure plan that he's putting forward, it's all about public-private partnerships. The government can't pay for it all alone, but private companies have to come in with that public-private partnership. Yeah. And this is really the key that Donald Trump is trying to do with Elaine Chao, the Transportation Secretary. Yeah. It's all about those public-private partnerships. And that's how we'll be able to afford it. And that's how we'll be able to get the things implemented and move forward. Well, remember, all of those deadlines you're talking about is to extend to the 2020 to be able to establish those partnerships and get it done. Yeah. But right now, PTC is it.
Well, Oliver, thank you so much. And hopefully we can make some progress on this with some kind of infrastructure bill. Our railroads are old. They are very old. And thank you so much for coming on this morning, sir.
Thank you, Rob.
All right, 35 minutes after the hour, buyer beware. Millions of people could be getting spied on through their televisions. Is your TV one of these? And remember when former President Obama said this at the National Prayer Breakfast?
Unless we get on our high horse and think this is slavery and Jim Crow all too often was justified in the name of Christ.
All right. Do you remember when President Obama used the National Prayer Breakfast to send a message to Christians that many felt was inappropriate?
Unless we get on our high horse and think this is unique to some other place, remember that during the Crusades and the Inquisition, people committed terrible deeds in the name of Christ. In our home country, slavery and Jim Crow all too often was justified in the name of Christ.
All right, well, President Trump's second National Prayer Breakfast happening in just hours from now, and Pastor Robert Jeffress, senior pastor at First Baptist Church in Dallas, Texas, will be there as a specially invited guest, and he joins us live now. Obviously, the president making some points there that may be true, but I guess the argument is it's time and place. Was that the place to make these kinds of points? And thank you so much for coming on this morning, first of all.
Well, thanks for having me. No, it wasn't appropriate. And, you know, it seems like any time President Obama stood in front of a group of Christians, it triggered some need he had to lambast them and lecture them. And what a stark contrast that is to President Trump. I told President Trump last night that part of his legacy is going to be he will be remembered as the most faith-friendly president in history. I mean, President Trump is more pro-life, pro-religious liberty, pro-Israel than any Democrat or Republican who's occupied the Oval Office, and that's why he's going to be met with such a warm reception at this morning's prayer breakfast.
What do you expect to hear from the president today?
I never try to predict what the president's going to say, but we did visit last night. I think he will talk about the importance of faith in American life. And you might remember last year, he began by telling people they might want to pray for Arnold Schwarzenegger's falling ratings in The Apprentice. But then he turned more serious and said since he had become president, the 5 most important words he ever heard were the words, "I am praying for you." And I think many in our audience would like to know that this president really does value prayer. He's asked for me to pray for him on many, many occasions, including last night. And I think it's comforting to know that we have a commander-in-chief who is not too proud to acknowledge his need for God's help. That ought to give every American great confidence.
Absolutely. And you have another special guest today. You got the vice president who is in Korea today because the Olympics are starting tomorrow in South Korea. And now you have Carson Wentz, whose team just won the Super Bowl, who's going to be there as well. So you've got some star power there from the NFL.
Well, absolutely. And, you know, one of the interesting things we had at our dinner at the White House, the congressional leadership that organizes this prayer breakfast from both sides of the aisle. And, you know, I think it's a good reminder today that as Americans, occasionally we need to put aside our partisan differences and come together united in our desire for God to bless our nation. You know, the psalmist said, "Blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord." And that promise is as true today as it was 3,000 years ago when it was written, and today's a good reminder of that.
Well, it's going to be a great day for you, and thank you so much for coming on and sharing some of your thoughts with us this morning, Pastor.
Thank you so much.
All right. 42 minutes after the hour, it has been the rally cry of Black Lives Matter for years. It's a scary thing how another school